Separate the real from the fake. See, we got to get back to love. If we get back to love, then that's when we're going to get back to us.
It seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when you're...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of People Empowerment, where we would strive to change the conditions in our community. Today's show is probably going to be one of the most serious shows that I have done, because today's main issue is going to be about our children, our failing school system, and what can be done about it. Today I have a guest here whose heart is absolutely tied into the betterment of our children, into a better education for our children. His name is Carl Paladino. As you know, Mr. Paladino is a very controversial person here in Buffalo for whatever reasons. But, you know, when somebody's got the right ideas for a real problem, then it really shouldn't matter who they are, what affiliation they have. It just matters what is their goal. What are they looking for? So, Mr. Paladino, it's great to have you here today. How you doing, sir?
Thank you.
Great to have you back. You have been on our show before. I think it was about 7 or 8 months ago you came on. And when you came on, we were talking about what's going on in the schools, and you were so passionate about it. You know, you just almost really couldn't get a word in edgewise because you were so serious about what's going on in the school system. Okay. Now, since then, you've actually ran for school board and you become a school board member. Yes. And I always say, in order to beat the man, you have to become the man. But you informed me, no, you don't have to become the man, you just have to get in there next to him and make some things happen. So that's good. So, you know, I want to talk to you on a bunch of various different things, but before I get on the subject of the school board and what's going on in the schools, because it's some big issues, first I'd like to talk about a couple of my issues. So first we'll touch my agenda, and then we'll get to yours, okay? Now, my agenda mainly is the Apollo Media Center, where we're at shooting from right now. And as people know, we've been back and forth in the Common Council trying to address the problems down here at the Apollo. Now, I assume that you understand that this public access center is just that. It's for access to the public. And that shows like this are on because of this center. And these are informative shows where the community comes out and the community addresses community problems and shares it with the community. If we didn't have public access, I wonder would shows like this even be on TV, and I kind of doubt it unless you have the money to pay for it, and then it would be on late night. So with that being said, we are here at the Apollo. We are here at the Apollo. Now, one of the issues that it came up for every citizen in Buffalo that watches public access is the franchise fees that have, the franchise fees, how that works, and the new adapter boxes that they brought out to get channels 19, 20, 21, and 22. Now, as you remember, last Tuesday I was in Common Council chambers talking about that, the franchise fee agreement and how it related to these adapter boxes. You know, and we spoke out very passionately, along with Fontana and other people, about the charges that are forthcoming. Well, I was going to get to you. and charges that are forthcoming. And, you know, and how it was a travesty of justice, how it's another fleecing of the community. I spoke very passionate about it, so did Kamal Fields. And then we look up, and you yourself, who came for another venue, another agenda, but you also had to chime in on the situation because you also could tell from that small conversation what's going on. So now, what are your thoughts about it again, about what they're doing? Could you, you know?
Well, here you have a big company, and part of the initial franchise understanding that was carved out was that they would be supportive of public access TV, and that we would have continuing access to it. Now this issue of analog versus digital comes into play, and they want to change the boxes, and they want to do this, that, and the other thing, and they want to charge people for that ability to access the public access channels.
Yes.
And I think they're way out of bounds. This was part of the original deal. This channel is accessed by poor people who don't necessarily have that expendable income that they can go out and pay for the changeover that's brought about by the industry, not by us. We didn't seek to change the digital from analog. They do. So they should pay the cost. I mean, the man was trying to say at the meeting that, well, it's being done all over the United States. Well, I pointed out to him that we're the second poorest city in the United States, and that as such, maybe we have to be the exception to the rule. You go figure it out, or we will contest your ability to maintain your franchise in this area. By maintaining the franchise, what I'm saying is that when the city granted them the franchise to be the cable TV provider here, they gave them a monopoly.
Yes, they
It
did.
isn't that you can go to another cable TV provider if they're being unfair to you. As such, the responsibility is much greater in a monopolistic predator such as Time Warner. That responsibility is higher than that you would get from another service company where there is an alternative. We don't have an alternative. We gave them all the rights, so therefore they have to be watched very carefully.
Didn't the city look into it, though, the Common Council, the people that signed the agreement? Would you think they would have foresight into what was
think
coming?
from what I gathered at the meeting, at least as I saw it playing out, I think you have the full support of the Common Council on this issue. I didn't see anybody in opposition to our position.
So, are you aware that in the last few years, actual Time Warner costs have went up by 70%?
Oh yeah, I get a monthly bill.
And if there's no way to stop the increases, they can continue to do it. I mean, see,
I'm not so sure that there's no way to stop it. I'm not familiar with the franchise agreement, but as I recall in the past, any time that they wanted to raise prices, they had to get Common Council approval. I'm not so sure that they can freely do it now unless somebody gave them that right, which I would find that very strange. I'd find that to be suspect if they did all of a sudden have that right. Yeah.
Another thing I asked the gentleman from Time Warner when they were there, I asked them, I said, well, just as you have changed these channels and you have said in the future that other channels are going to go to this digital, well, what does that mean? Are you going to bring up another box, another adapter box connected to that box? Are you going to impose, more charges for that? Where does it stop?
In just about every other industry, when one party seeks to make changes in the way they offer their service or perform their end of the contract, that party should be responsible for the initiation cost of that change. When the other party doesn't seek it, the other party is just as well off with the status quo. The party seeking to change should pay. And I think what we're doing here is we're establishing that responsibility clearly to them, that they can't just come and be a predator on the community and seek to improve for themselves something that we didn't even seek to improve. We're perfectly happy with our analog TVs, and we don't need HD and digital and all that other nonsense. I think the point here is that this is progress. This is technical progress, and as it comes on, the party who wants to advance it should be responsible for it. I pointed out that I didn't think Time Warner was a very responsible citizen because the programming for the access channels has never been published in any way. I mean, they don't even have a place on the access channel itself where it shows you what programs are coming up. So if I want to watch a certain thing, if I want to watch a school board meeting, I have no idea when it's going to be run on the TV.
Well, actually, that's not exactly completely true, because as of recently, through our negotiations of asking just for that, they do put it on, but they put it on the very day that the program is coming on. They don't let you know days in advance that it's coming on, but they have been doing that. But now, with these cable boxes that have these adapter boxes that have been come, do you realize all the people that don't have those boxes have been successfully evicted from being able to watch public access?
Yeah.
And it's something that they're paying for in their contract right now. They're paying for this service.
And that was a condition precedent to the contract. So I think they're going to have to pay.
You know, you being an ex-lawyer, I understand that you don't practice
I'm not an
law
ex-lawyer.
right now. Oh, you're still a lawyer?
I'm still a lawyer.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're still a lawyer. Excuse my misphrase. I was wondering, now we had a couple of lawyers that have came and volunteered to look over some of this paperwork with us, but they've been very busy and distracted. Is there any way that at the end of our conversation today I can get you a copy of the franchise agreement and you could possibly
I could have somebody in my office look at it.
to look at it, because I've had a couple paralegal classes. I think I understand the law very good, but still I'm not a lawyer, and even though I tend to point out things that are clearly words are clearly construed to mean that they're construed, still the city continues to send their lawyer up to say, well, legally that's this and that, which, he's one point of view. I know that I understand legal jargon. I know I'm not wrong, but I think it takes another lawyer to say, hold up. These are the ramifications of this contract. This is what this means. He's either right or he's wrong.
We'll look at it for you.
I'd appreciate that, and I'm sure the public would appreciate that, because I always say, who's going to stand up for the public? The Common Council is there, but many times I ask, are they really representing the best issues of the public? Once they're elected to office, are they really doing what they're supposed to do? So that's the issue we'll address.
Well, that's human nature. Okay, sometimes they're just disengaged. They can't focus. They're not interested in the topic. Other times they could be corrupted too. You just don't know unless you get better evidence of what it might be. In this particular instance, though, the vibes I was getting from the Common Council was that they were virtually unanimous in the decision to tell this company to go back and do their homework and sharpen up their pencil. Yeah.
And I hope they listen. I hope Time Warner listens, and I hope they go back and reevaluate this situation, especially the part where they're going to, like I said, what about the shut-ins, the people with no cars, the disabled, the elderly, the people that can't get out to get down to Chicago and get these boxes? You're going to charge them $40 a piece to come out and do it? I mean, it's ridiculous.
I think you're 100% right in arguing that position.
So anybody that's a paid subscriber, why wouldn't they just take the boxes to them, give them to them, and the ones that couldn't put them in for as a courtesy? Because the fee's already coming. I mean, Jesus. Anyway. All right, so now I'll move on with that. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about, I did want to talk about what's actually going down here at the Apollo, but I think I'm going to just pass on that right now, what's going on at the Apollo. And if we have time when we get done, maybe I'll touch back on it. But I think I want to get to the most important thing that's going on right now, and that's some of the things that you wanted to talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is the school board, and you being elected to the school board, okay? So let's just go chronological order of how this happened. Now, you saw there was a problem. You saw there was a need. Now,
I've observed the need for many, many years.
Now, you're not a gentleman that took that job, seeking out that job for money, obviously. You didn't need the paycheck from the school board. That's obvious.
No, I don't take a paycheck from the school board.
So I want you to tell these people out here why Carl Paladino decided to get on that school board.
As an observer of the school system in the context of the city at large, I was observing the decay of our city overall. And that decay over the last few decades, I can say from my heart and from study that the root cause is the dysfunctional school system, public school system in Buffalo. That school system has improperly, incompetently, overtly, and in some cases just by simple negligence and incompetence, destroyed the lives of generations of people, of residents of the city of Buffalo. We've watched for 30 years the flight of younger people from the city, people who want to raise their families, because they couldn't afford the private schools, and they certainly weren't going to send their kids on a bus to a school system that is as dysfunctional and non-performing as the Buffalo system. So they went off to the suburbs. They left town. You've watched our population. In my career, the population has dipped from 360,000 people to 260,000 people. that decline in population, that flight of the working class from the city has left our property values at rock bottom. We float along the bottom of the pond. We're known as the second poorest city in America. We have decay, housing decay, every place. We're the only city, by the way, in New York State that has a backlog of demolitions of somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 buildings. That decay is there because people decided to leave, and without any replacement. The infill housing program was successful for a while, but they ran out of oomph. They stopped building it. But we weren't attracting the young people back. We were attracting the older people out of decayed housing into some better housing, which is fine, you know. But it still doesn't add to the economic vitality and the commercial vitality of the community. There's no money here. I watched all that happening, and then I really started to look closely at the Board of Education. I went to many of their meetings over the past 6 years, and I saw the disgraceful, top secret, non-transparent way that the school system was being operated by a bunch of people who were basically clueless as to their responsibilities, by people who had no sensitivity. They talked the talk, but they couldn't walk the walk. They could not do what is right because they weren't competent to do what was right. They weren't competent to change things. They had no inclination to change. Here you have the head of the teachers union highly supporting with money and vocal support membership on a board that is supposed to be adversarial with the teachers union, giving them everything that they wanted over the years, giving them cosmetic surgery, giving them forever health benefits for retirees. We pay right now $66,600,000 a year for the retirement health insurance benefits of 4,013 retirees.
Now, so that people can understand, you're talking about the board and
the Board of
and
Education
Phil,
is
working with Phil Rumore and the teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay,
And they gave
so
the
working
farm away
hand in
too.
hand, right? So
With appearances that they were being adversarial, but they weren't adversarial. They gave them everything they wanted. They were union-inclined people.
now you watched this go down for 6 years. You just studied it before you finally got in. Now, what about before that? The people that run the board, how long have they been there? Do you know? Because I'm not really fresh on these
Well,
numbers.
there's
Can
different
you tell me
terms.
a relevant average?
You see, the board has changed over the years. Many memberships have changed, but the type of person that's been put on the board, okay, that type of person has been who has failed this community.
Is that the Black Sisterhood?
The Black Sisterhood is primarily responsible in recent years, okay? But in past years, I think as the sisterhood was growing, as it was maturing, and before it actually took over control, certain people on the board had this idea that they could work behind the scenes and solve all the problems. And then they have these meetings, and basically if you went to a meeting, the first 2 hours was all feel-good stuff. They bring little Johnny in and say he plays the violin, and little Linda, she dances, and you'd watch all this nonsense at a meeting, and then they would go through the work part of it with a single vote, and they'd be done. Nobody ever talked about the problems. In the meantime, I remember when there were only 8 priority schools. Now there are 45 out of 57 schools are failed schools, priority or focus schools. That's disgusting. When the Congress voted the No Child Left Behind legislation, they did not provide for school systems as bad as Buffalo on what to do with children who were going to failed schools. They provided that a child in a failed school identified by the state as failing has to be given a choice before the beginning of the next year to attend a performing school. We have 45 out of 57. That means there's 12 good schools and there's 45 bad ones. There's 27,000 kids in those 45 failed schools. We couldn't possibly put them into a performing school.
Right.
The legislation is devoid of any thing that we could do to put them into a performing school. So that's why I've come to the point where I'm saying this system is so bad, this Board of Education, the majority on it is so bad that it's time for us to ask the state legislature and the governor of New York State for vouchers.
Well,
Now, Bobby Jindal did that in Louisiana. He had failed schools.
Before we get to that, I want to get to that voucher system, absolutely. But hold on, before you get that, I just want to get something clear to people before we move on about, I said the black sisterhood, I say it again because I feel had you just said the sisterhood, people wouldn't take it so however they want to take it. But because you put the black sisterhood, people feel like it's racial. But the fact is, aren't they all black?
They are. Well,
I mean,
the people on the board.
On the
are,
board, that's what I'm talking
you
about.
know,
On the board.
But there are other women in the sisterhood. It's not just those 5 people on the board.
It's the women that run the period.
Crystal Barton, the president of the administrators union, appears to be their leader. Okay, she calls all the shots. She tells them what to do. There are others involved, male and female, in this idea. Okay, that that race has to be advanced before the welfare of the children.
Exactly. Now, it's a fact that most of them are black. It's just a fact that it is what it is. It's also a fact that most of the kids that are failing in our system are black children.
Terrible.
Absolutely, they're black children. So I would think that, and most people would think in general, that black people would try to have the best interest of their black children in mind whenever they move forward and stuff like this, wouldn't you think? So I have to agree with you. It is a travesty of what's been going on, and these people always want to scream the race card. Let's scream the truth card.
A couple years ago, Florence Johnson made the remark first that black children should be taught and the district should be supervised by a black person. I listened to that and I said, what's wrong with her? Don't we want the district to be supervised by the best person?
Yes.
Whether the person is black, white, green,
Blue, whatever.
All right? Why aren't we looking for the best person? I mean, it took me 6 months to get James Williams out of this district. He was bad. Every year it's like watching that movie.
Recurring Christmas thing or whatever. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day, right?
Okay, the guy gets us the same nonsense, the same hollow promises, never performing, never performing, never performing. Why? We finally came to grips with that and got him out. And I expected then that sensible people would rise to that occasion and recognize that the dysfunction of our school system and that they would go out and search for the best possible person.
People.
And who would that best possible person be? There are people, black, white, green, whatever, all over the country, all over, who have taken urban districts that have been in failure and have turned them around. They've done the things that had to be done. They work with seed schools. The highly at-risk kids, they don't go sit there and point at the homes and say the parents are dysfunctional. The parents are victims of the same dysfunctional school system as the kids.
Same.
What they do for those at-risk kids from those dysfunctional homes is they go in and they say to the parent, give us a shot. Let me take little Johnny and let me put little Johnny into a seed school. Okay? And in that seed school, the child lives there all week, can go home on weekends. It's a boarding type of thing. He's nourished with 3 square meals a day. He's dressed appropriately, okay, and he doesn't lose self-esteem because his clothes aren't clothes that the other kids wear. He gets the opportunity then to be taught all day. He then gets the opportunity to have some outside time and some sports and some athletics. He then gets the opportunity to have his study period. And then at 7:30, 8 o'clock, that little child is put to bed.
You know,
okay, he's not let off the bus, okay, and mom and dad are someplace else, and he has to run to the neighborhood.
May I say, and I want people to understand this, people get offended by when you say something like that, a boarding school, but what they don't understand is, do you know how many wealthy people across the country all through history have sent their kids to boarding schools, and how well they have turned out, and they sent them to these schools and they paid for it. But because of the fact that a white gentleman like Mr. Paladino would say, bring up the idea of sending our kids to boarding school, you want to get offended by it when he's right. You want to get offended when he says that he wants to send your kids someplace where they'll have attention most of the day. Where they'll have
there's a movie about this. It's called Waiting for Superman.
Waiting for Superman.
You should be playing that movie on this Access channel every day of the week so everybody can see it. It's about seed schools. It's about a bunch of parents sitting in a bleachers with their children and watching a woman with a drum and all these numbers in the drum, and she puts her hand in and she selects little Johnny. And Johnny jumps and Johnny's mother jump. They're so happy because he has won the lottery to get into a better school. There's such a demand for these schools. He won the lottery, and all the other parents sitting there waiting. Oh, I hope my child is accepted. That's what it's about.
We need to be watching this movie, Waiting for Superman.
Making our kids subject to a lottery? Are you kidding me? They talked about moving away from neighborhood schools into this school choice nonsense. There isn't a kid in the city of Buffalo that gets a choice, okay, in any of our non-test schools. We have test schools. You take a test, and if you reach a certain level, you get into the test school. It doesn't really work that way because there are exceptions to the rule. It depends upon who you know, okay? And they play that game. In reality, in our test schools, we have anywhere from 20 to 50 kids that don't live in the city of Buffalo, taking a slot from a child in the city of Buffalo.
Absolutely true. Absolutely.
And they
true.
know it.
And I know it for a
and
fact
they didn't
it's
do
true.
anything about it.
I know it's true.
And I brought it up 4 or 5 times in that district.
I know it's true.
Okay, in the board meetings, they have kids holding a slot in City Honors or Hutch Tech or Da Vinci in these schools where here we are so limited in having good schools, and they're letting suburban kids come into our schools. That is wrong.
Yes, it
I'm
is.
pointing
Yes,
out
it is.
the wrongs.
Listen, I got to wrap it up. We're coming back for the second half, but it's important that I wrap it up, let you guys know. Listen, please go to the website. For you people out there that's been going to the website, you can't see this on public access because you don't have the adapter box. Go to the website, People Empowerment at ApolloMedia.com, and see the show. We'll be back in a minute with the second half with Mr. Carl Paladino, and we can see what we can do to help our kids. Until then, this is Nate Boyd telling you, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention.